Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your pile of information and, well, really try to unearth the crucial insights.
Yeah, dig deep.
Exactly. Today we're plunging into a truly fascinating, maybe at times unsettling, collection of sources. They explore the very nature of reality, truth, and society in our modern world. It's like a philosophical thriller mixed with current events and, a dash of personal introspection. It's quite a mix.
It really is. And our mission today for you is to navigate this really complex landscape of ideas. We're going from, personal psychological struggles, the science of our nervous system,
Right.
all the way up to these grand narratives shaping economics, politics, culture, huge scale.
Yeah.
We'll look at how perceptions get molded, how truth can be well fractured, and how some of these authors see society driven by various death cults, consumption, ideology, things like that.
Oh.
It's really about trying to understand the forces underneath it all and what they mean for, our collective sense of reality, but also our individual sense, too.
Makes sense. It's trying to get a grip on the ground beneath our feet, like you said.
Exactly. Because it feels like it's shifting sometimes.
It really does. And we've got a rich tapestry of material today to help us navigate this. We're drawing from some deep philosophical, psychological essays, probing the mind, basically, but also a very personal account, someone navigating mental health challenges, but weaving in sharp societal critique, too.
Right. That blend is powerful.
It is. And then we've even case some let's say, highly charged contemporary commentary on recent events drawn from online platforms.
Okay, so right up to the minute stuff, too.
Yeah, exactly. It's a mix that I think promises some pretty profound aha moments, maybe a few uncomfortable truths, too, but necessary ones about the world we're living in.
Definitely. Okay, let's unpack this. So let's start with the personal lens.
Yeah.
Our first source, a note about being different, psychotic, in society. It puts forward this really profound idea. It suggests that as reality itself gets more complex, more challenging, the constant information overload, conflicting views, everything changing so fast.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Our emotional life needs an increasingly intricate, almost like a mental prison, the author calls it, to shield us from traumatic experiences.
A prison. Wow, that's a strong word.
It is, and this complexity, the source argues, can organize the links between our consciousness and our thoughts in a way that leads to paradox and/or multiple paradoxes.
Huh. So it's not just about external stuff hitting us, but how our internal world tries to cope with that overwhelming external world.
Precisely. And these paradoxes, they aren't just static things. The source says they actually stimulate consciousness.
Really?
By causing a kind of splintering of the awareness of one or more realities, it's like our mind creates multiple viewpoints to manage it all.
So splintering? That sounds potentially disorienting.
It can be. But the source frames it as a catalyst, yes, for paradox, but also for self-awareness. It's this strange feedback loop. Struggle leads to understanding, which might lead to more paradox.
Okay, I'm starting to see, and the real insight here, for you listening, might be that this isn't just a clinical thing for a few people.
Right.
The source seemed to suggest that the sheer complexity of modern life might be pushing all of us towards these kinds of internal coping mechanisms. It gives a name to that feeling many of us have,
That feeling of your sense of reality being constantly under pressure.
Exactly, like it's under siege. Have you ever felt like the world is just becoming too much, pushing your internal sense of what's real right to its limits? This source gives a name to that feeling.
And building right on that internal struggle, the source immediately connects it to our biology. Specifically, the endocannabinoid system, the ECS.
The ECS.
Yeah, and it's not presented as some minor thing. It's described as a complex and widespread neuromodulatory system. Absolutely crucial.
Crucial for what exactly?
Well, things like the development of our central nervous system, synaptic plasticity, which is vital for learning and memory, and also how our body responds to insults, basically stresses, internal or external, to maintain homeostasis.
Homeostasis, keeping things stable, balanced.
Exactly. It's the body's amazing ability to keep its internal environment steady, despite external changes. It's designed to keep us balanced mentally and physically.
And the implications here are huge, right? Because the ECS has those receptors, CB1 and CB2.
That's right. CB1 receptors are all over the brain, which shows how important they are for neurological function. CB2 are more in other body parts, the immune system included.
So its involvement is massive, which is why it's key for understanding how things like cannabis affect us, but also its role in various diseases.
Precisely. And intriguingly, the source mentions research suggesting the ECS may be disrupted in schizophrenia, affecting that synaptic plasticity and other CNS functions.
Wow, so that brings a real biological dimension to this reality crisis the author talks about. It's not just philosophical or psychological anymore.
It grounds it right in our wiring. And the author makes it very personal, too. In a specific, quite vulnerable detail, they question if their own endocannabinoid system got overloaded.
Overloaded? From what?
From trying to take on too much, basically, leading to an energy deficit and then a failure in the modulation of the overall cohesion within the nervous system.
So a system breakdown that makes the science very real, very lived. It's not abstract at all.
Not at all. It's profoundly physical. This internal battle, this grappling with overwhelming reality, it gets an even more vivid description in our next source, that for slag van een engel.
Right.
This text explicitly links the act of sort of breaking through your normal experienced reality, going against the current.
Yeah.
It links that to a counter-reaction. The author says reality fights back.
Fights back. How?
By blurring that critical line between your internal thoughts and what's happening externally. It creates what the source calls a reality crisis.
A reality crisis. That sounds intense.
Extremely. And what's fascinating, or maybe alarming, is that this crisis, which the source says often stems from a really profound investigation into the foundations of existence.
So deep thinking, deep questioning.
Exactly. That crisis is often clinically diagnosed as a psychotic decompensation.
Ah, okay, so it gets labeled as illness.
Right. But the author strongly pushes back against that interpretation. They suggest these intense experiences aren't just symptoms of a disease.
What are they then, according to this source?
Desperate attempts to regain control and understanding in a world where the external systems, care systems, meaning systems, have failed the individual.
That's a radically different perspective. Control and understanding, not illness.
It reframes it completely, and the author illustrates this by connecting it to their own early childhood trauma, a life-threatening asthma attack.
Wow.
Which led to this deep existential fear, an overdeveloped sense of responsibility. Then family disintegration piled on top, leading to what they call premature autodidactics.
Premature autodidactics, meaning
A forced, self-taught search for order and meaning when all the usual anchors, all the support systems were just gone.
So trying to build your own foundations when everything else is crumbled, that puts a different spin on what might look like decompensation from the outside. It sounds like survival.
A radical, maybe painful form of self-preservation. That's how the source seems to frame it. And it gets even stranger, exploring this altered internal landscape. The source describes a state where fragments of consciousness travel through time, torn from their original context.
Travel through time. How does that work?
Well, in this state, future thoughts, future feelings, they don't just feel like possibilities or anxieties. They manifest right in the present moment as direct experienced realities.
Like you're actually living the future now.
Something like that. The author uses this incredible metaphor, creating an Einstein-Rosen bridge in the psyche, a kind of wormhole.
A wormhole in the mind, where the future invades the present.
Exactly, fundamentally altering perceived reality.
Okay, so what does this mean for the person experiencing it? Why would the mind do that? It sounds terrifying.
It probably is. But the author interprets this temporal distortion as a survival mechanism.
Survival. How?
The idea is the mind can't process a devastating trauma just in the now. It's too much. So it spreads the impact across the entire timeline.
Smears it out, almost.
Yeah.
So future anxieties, past pains, they feel present.
Right. It's internally logical for a psyche trying to cope, but externally it clashes completely with consensus reality.
Which labels it psychotic.
Precisely. It's seen as a desperate, maybe internally coherent, but externally baffling attempt to survive an unbearable reality.
That really resonates with what the author said in the other piece. A note about being different. About feeling the need to reinvent the wheel when they were young.
Yes, due to various excellences, they said.
Right. Being very self-taught, developing distrust, and psychotically unrestrained manias linked to fear and an insatiable hunger for knowledge.
It paints a picture of a life driven by this intense internal quest, born from feeling like external meaning systems failed them. It's really quite startling how these deeply personal struggles with fractured reality, they seem to echo outwards, don't they, into the broader society.
Yeah, it's like the macro mirrors the micro, or vice versa.
Exactly. So let's shift our focus now outward to this collective crisis of language and truth that our sources detail extensively. It seems to underpin so many modern struggles.
Okay, where do we start?
Parables of Imperfection sets the scene with this really powerful metaphor. It says, "The word, which had been a river, was broken into cups. Each cup boasted of ocean."
Wow, so language, once unifying like a river,
Is now fragmented, broken into countless little cups, each claiming it holds the whole truth, the entire ocean.
and that's where the war of sayings began, where victory counted more than verity. Winning the argument became more important than finding the truth.
Precisely. And then comes the warning. Woe when naming rules the named. For to label is to bind, and to bind is to blind.
So the act of labeling, which should help us understand, actually limits our sight, binds us.
That's the chilling suggestion, that naming becomes a form of control, of obscuring rather than revealing.
And this idea gets picked up really strongly in that other source, How My Belief System Became a Death Cult. There's a whole section on the shattered logos.
And War of Narratives, words as weapons in the elite's babble, stark titles.
And it really are. The author there feels society is just caught in this relentless war of narratives where truth is no longer a discovery but a battleground.
Meaning the search for objective truth is just abandoned.
Seems like it. In favor of ideological conquest. And victory, the source says grimly, belongs to those who control perception. It's a battle for the definition of reality itself.
So the words become the reality, not just pointers to it.
Exactly. The map is the territory, and if you question the map, you're questioning reality itself. It's insidious.
It really is.
And the author gives this specific example, scrolling through TV late at night, seeing a diet shake ad, pitched with all these buzzwords, revolution and wellness, truly pure blend, empower the best version of you, all that stuff.
Right, the usual marketing speak.
But then they looked at the ingredients, mostly artificial, and that was the moment of clarity for them. Language was a costume draped over banality.
Instead of revealing.
It obscures. Even in something as mundane as marketing, it's about constructing perception, often without real substance behind it.
And this war of narratives, it's portrayed as not just happening by accident, right? Not just a side effect of social media.
No, the sources suggest it's deliberate, calculated, described as the elite's babble, a deliberate confusion of tongues to divide and rule.
Babel. Like the biblical story of confused languages.
Precisely. And it highlights the use of Orwellian turns of phrase, things like alternative facts, propaganda slogans, all designed to deliberately muddy the waters of reality.
It's not just misleading then, it's actively disorienting, making it harder to know what's actually true.
Exactly. Think about political debates where terms constantly shift meaning, or social media echo chambers, each with its own jargon. It fractures shared understanding.
It does. And what's really unsettling is this idea that contradiction breeds submission.
How does that work?
By constantly throwing riddles and contradictions at people, the source suggests power induces a kind of paralysis of the mind.
Mental exhaustion, basically.
Yeah. And the relief from that exhaustion comes from just like giving in, yielding to the latest decree from above.
Wow. It's like that old magician's trick, distract with one hand.
And perform the sleight of hand with the other.
Exactly.
This manufactured confusion serves an agenda of control. It makes people easily steered because objectivity itself is doubted.
It reminds me of that example the source uses Orwell's Ministry of Truth rewriting history.
Right. But today it's maybe more subtle, not physically changing records, but overloading the public with contradicting narratives until memory and truth blur.
It creates this mental fog, leaves us tired, and just willing to accept whatever narrative offers a moment's clarity, even if it's wrong.
A deeply effective form of manipulation. And this theme of fractured truth, of manufactured consent, it's pushed even further in Corruption of the Faithful. This source makes a really radical argument.
Okay, what's the argument?
It argues that democracy itself, which we often think of as secular, has mutated into a theocratic democracy.
Theocratic, like based on religion.
Sort of. It presents itself as a sacred order, demanding obedience, ritual, and sacrifice. The state itself becomes almost godlike, intertwined with ideology and economics.
That's a very provocative way to frame democracy,
Where
especially for listeners who see it purely as secular, about individual rights.
it is provocative. The source suggests this happens subtly when ideological purity becomes the main goal, and any dissent isn't just disagreement, it's treated like heresy, evil.
So who are the priests in this theocratic democracy then? Not actual clergy, I assume.
No. The source says they are scholars, journalists, activists, or educators. People who dictate doctrine, excommunicate the impure, and demand total obedience.
Dictate, not debate. Prosecute, not persuade.
Exactly. And if you question them, you're not just wrong, you're evil.
Which creates this alarming situation where, as the source says, the system does not need to create external enemies. It turns its own people into them.
A chilling thought. How does it enforce this beyond just propaganda?
Well, the source talks about a ritual of dehumanization, making sure there's always an enemy, the impure, the dissenter.
Which justifies anything done against them.
That's the implication. Any atrocity committed against them. And the masses, feeling righteous in their own belief, can become the monsters they claim to oppose.
Leading to possession on a mass scale, where people lose their ability to think critically, independently.
Yeah, it's a powerful warning about unchecked ideology, even within systems that claim to be about freedom.
You know, the Enlightenment aimed to separate church and state,
Right.
elevate reason over faith.
Right, that was the goal.
But these sources suggest that maybe this separation created a kind of spiritual void.
A void, and something rushed in to fill it.
That's the argument. New secular religions, modern ideologies, nationalism, communism, fascism, progressivism, technocracy, whatever it might be.
So these function like religions? How?
Well, they offer comprehensive doctrines, they demand devotion, and they draw really sharp lines between the true believers and heretics, just like traditional faiths.
Providing belonging, purpose, a clear moral compass, things people crave, especially when the world feels chaotic.
Exactly. It taps into that deep-seated human need.
It reminds me of that line, the human heart, it seems, tirelessly seeks something to worship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in secular times, maybe instead of God, it finds things like the people, the master race, the proletariat to elevate.
Manifestos become scriptures. Charismatic leaders demand obedience.
Right. And the corruption of the faithful appendices give some really specific examples of this throughout history.
Like what?
Things like the French Revolution's cult of reason, trying to replace religion with civic ritual. Or liberation theology, blending Marxism and Christianity for social justice.
Okay.
And Hannah Arendt's observations on how mass movements sweep up ordinary people into these totalizing ideologies, making them surrender personal judgment.
It's a recurring pattern then. Humanity's need for belief and how easily that can be channeled or maybe co-opted.
It seems so, always finding new forms, new symbols. But there's a darker undercurrent here, too, in these new faiths. The sources talk about Thanos Freud's idea of the death drive.
The death drive, how does that fit in?
Well, the source, How Pornography and Sex Became a Death Cult, explains that when ordinary life feels meaningless, when institutions fail people, an extreme cause can seem heroic. And this can lead to these death cult ideologies that woo disillusioned youth with dramatic, often apocalyptic visions.
Apocalyptic visions, promising a radical transformation, often through destruction.
Exactly. Offering a grand narrative, a sense of belonging that's missing elsewhere.
And this is where it gets really disturbing, right? The source talks about a perplexing convergence.
Yes, where modern hedonism and hypersexual fantasy feed a subconscious apocalyptic longing.
Hedonism feeding apocalyptic longing. That seems contradictory.
It does, but the source suggests that whether it's nihilistic elements on the left or zealous fundamentalists, both can end up envisioning a radical end to the current world.
And be willing to sacrifice the present world on the altar of their imagined future. That's chilling. It's not just dissatisfaction, it's a yearning for an end, it's a reset.
However violent.
And
the text gives those stark examples of the Manson family.
Where, yeah, that unfettered eros, sex and drugs twisted into Thanatos, murder for a race war.
Right. And conversely, Heaven's Gate, extreme asceticism repressing eros.
For a mass suicide they believed was transcendence.
Both showing how charismatic leaders confuse erotic manipulation, whether through indulgence or repression, with this death obsession to create these destructive cults. Thanatos takes many forms.
Many terrifying forms.
And digging deeper into the mindset, how my belief system became a death cult, describes something called divine blindness.
Divine blindness. What's that?
It's a state where someone becomes so utterly possessed by an idea, a cause, a calling, that they become blind to foresight, to morality, to the human costs.
Blinded by their own conviction.
Completely. They feel this ecstatic certitude, a fierce clarity of purpose, but they never suspect that the clarity is the blindness, a chilling paradox.
So for the person experiencing it, there's no awareness of being blind.
Often none. They're so consumed by their path, their purpose. It's like perceptual tunnel vision. They only see the blinding light of their truth, oblivious to the shadows it casts, the destruction.
They genuinely believe they're doing something glorious or necessary.
Right. Whether it's a terrorist, a cult leader, maybe even an artist sacrificing compassion for their art, foresight is just gone.
And the result is often ashes and blood.
That's the grim reality described, which leads to that powerful warning quote.
Let me see if I remember. Beware of the fire that claims to purify absolutely.
Yes. Whether it burns in the world or in your mind, it will likely consume more than it saves.
The true divine light, if such a thing exists, would illuminate. Without burning it, would guide, not blind.
Exactly. A profound call for humility, for constant ethical checking, even in our strongest beliefs.
Okay, let's shift gears now to something very current. An event that seems to tragically illustrate so many of these themes. Fractured realities, ideological war.
You're talking about the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Yes. The Fox News source reports the arrest of this 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, turned in by his own father late on September 11th.
Right. President Trump broke the news of the arrest initially.
And the investigation's ongoing, looking into his motives, his background, specifically mentioning anti-fascist inscriptions on the bullet casings, and his online activity.
A stark example of ideology potentially fueling violence.
It really is. And what's striking is the commentary right after from Chris Ware, that former FBI assistant director.
What did he say?
He noted that the language Robinson was using online wasn't particularly unique. You see this stuff all across social media.
That's worrying.
And he said he found it hard to distinguish between someone just radicalized online, posting extreme things, versus someone actually willing and ready to do violence.
That line is getting incredibly blurry.
It seems so. And Ward made this really pointed comment about the irony that the anti-fascists these days, they seem to be taking a lot of playbooks out of the fascists.
Wow. That's a heavy statement.
It is. And it raises that critical question for you, the listener. In this saturated online world full of intense radical talk, how do we tell real threats from just rhetoric? How do we assess risk?
It's a huge challenge. That line is dangerously blurred. And then you see how instantly the event gets absorbed into different narratives, like that Wise Disciple YouTube video.
Right. How do they frame it?
They argued Kirk's death wasn't a silencing, but an act that actually backfired.
Backfired how?
By immortalizing him, making his ideas, his videos, potentially more viral than ever before, saying he was committed to the clash of ideas and pondering how that clash continues now he's gone.
So constructing a martyr narrative almost immediately.
Absolutely, transforming tragedy into a catalyst for the movement.
And the implications they draw are huge, comparing him to JFK and MLK.
Yes, suggesting his opponents were dumb to think violence would silence him, that instead it elevates him to that category.
Wow, that's a big leap.
It is. The video captures that immediate shock, the fog of confusion, the dystopian feeling around the event, and the online reaction.
A mix of horror and, I guess, intense ideological takes?
Exactly. It shows just how fast events get assimilated, reinforcing existing beliefs rather than challenging them. The clash of ideas intensifies. Then you have a completely different take from the Gabe Poirot YouTube video. Deeply spiritual, prophetic. It immediately cites Genesis. You intended to harm me, but God is turning it all for good. Framing it not just as political, but as an attack by the same spirit that attacked on September 11th, 2001.
Okay, so elevating it to a cosmic spiritual battle.
Entirely. It's seen as a call to repentance, Kirk as a martyr, explicitly comparing him to Stephen being stoned in the Bible.
Envisioning Saul's like the Apostle Paul before conversion, watching this and now encountering Jesus because of it.
Yes, the message is clear. The battle is spiritual, not political. The church is waking up to fight antichrist and lunatics.
Right. And again, it's crucial we state we're not endorsing these views.
Absolutely not.
We're showing how these sources interpret the event. It's a powerful illustration of that war of narratives, that ideological possession we talked about earlier.
Exactly. How quickly events get folded into existing faith systems, secular or religious, complete with martyrs, prophecies, calls to action, further fracturing reality. To understand Kirk himself, it's interesting to look at that discussion he had with Jordan Peterson about his origin story.
Right. He started by protesting cookie prices.
Yeah, in high school. But he said what really drove him was reading American history with a deliberately positive and patriotic lens.
Pushing back against what he saw as the dominant narrative.
Exactly. Against the orthodoxy of the time. He felt there was an underemphasis on the heroism and the courage and the brilliance of the founders.
And an overemphasis on the evil and the tragedy and the horror without the redemption story.
Right. He wanted to reframe that narrative, offer a clear affirmative story.
And what's revealing is his belief about young men, right? That hyper-masculine verbal sparring, the gladiatorial match for the best ideas of the West.
He found that very alluring to them. He observed young men, especially working-class men, are looking for meaning, direction, connection, validation.
Things he felt they weren't getting from an educational model he saw as hyper-feminine.
And he explicitly grounds his own work in a religious substrate. Christianity is my foundation, he said.
Which connects back to that idea from another source, the rebels without roots.
Yes, modern youth rebelling against order, defining themselves by negation.
And Kirk presented himself as offering a rooted, purpose-driven alternative. An anchor in what he saw as nihilism shows the power of a coherent narrative.
Definitely. And finally on this, you have Elon Musk's perspective from that rally video.
Right, the Unite the Kingdom rally. Yeah. What was his take?
He described woke stuff as super racist, super sexist, and anti-religion, but only anti-Christian. Called it a virus.
Strong language.
Yeah.
And his solution?
Advocating for a future of fairness and common sense, advancement based on work, talent, and integrity, achieved through revolutionary government change. A clear ideological stance.
And the crowd reaction in that video.
Yeah.
They framed him as a champion.
Yeah, for free speech, giving them hope again, saying Britain is awake.
It really reflects that yearning for strong leadership, clear direction, especially when people feel adrift in fractured narratives or feel traditional values are declining.
Exactly. Figures with a strong, unambiguous vision become rallying points. #Tag5. The death cult of consumption and modern systems.
Okay, let's broaden out again now to some of the wider societal critiques in these sources. They talk about entire systems taking on these death cult characteristics, starting with food.
Yeah, it sounds strange at first, but how consumption of food became a death cult offers this deeply personal, really disturbing critique.
How so?
The author describes realizing this sense of impurity inside me as much as outside, and this led directly to an eating disorder rooted in despair.
Despair manifesting as an eating disorder.
Yes. Food became a minefield, seasonings were suspect, only white foods felt safe. A desperate search for purity, for control.
It's not just about diet then, it's deeper, psychological, spiritual almost.
Exactly. The author says every spice now tastes unclean, as if each herb and powder carries a moral stain. Their tongue became a judge and jailer, branding food unclean spiritually.
Wow. An alienation from taste itself, from a fundamental pleasure.
A deep rift, they call it. And they contrast this with memories of sincere meals, eating with a poor family, their grandmother's wartime rations.
Meals filled with humility and real thankfulness.
Right. Compared to modern abundance laced with apathy, where food is just a tool of denial or a badge of status.
It's a powerful indictment of our relationship with something so basic, suggesting even nourishment gets corrupted by anxiety and status.
And the critique extends beyond food, right into our economic systems. How my belief system became a death cult talks about Mammon's engine.
Mammon's engine. Finance and debt-fueling society.
In a relentless, almost predatory way. The Federal Reserve is portrayed not as a public servant, but a cartel cloaked in public authority.
Using mirrors and smoke machines to conjure money from debt.
Precisely. Noting that new money enters circulation as debt owed back to those banks, creating this perpetual cycle of obligation.
So the creation of money itself creates the burden of repayment. Keeps the engine running.
That's the argument. And what does this mean for us, the people?
Well, the source calls debt the sacrament that completes the spell, turning lives into perpetual obligation.
A debt-ridden population is a compliant population, too busy making payments.
To have the energy to question larger structures, creating a kind of financial feudalism where our lives are just fuel for the economy.
That's a bleak picture, and the source makes this chilling comparison.
To ancient cults sacrificing people.
Yeah. suggesting things like the 2008 crash or austerity measures are modern sacrifices demanded by the system.
Even wars are framed as violent resets that benefit elites and wouldn't be possible without fiat money.
That's the claim. It's deeply cynical, maybe, but definitely thought-provoking. A hidden, ritualistic cost to modern prosperity. And this theme of consumption and purity, it extends right into sexuality for the author, another potential death cult.
How does that connection work?
They describe their appetite for food and my appetite for touch becoming mirrors of each other, twin hungers that terrify me.
Wow, so basic human desires become sources of fear.
Yeah. Lust is seen as feeding a monster inside, leading to self-starvation of affection out of terror of being consumed, a fractured inner world.
And pornography fits into this how?
It's described as nothing less than a death cult for the soul, a ritual that offers pleasure but in fact worships emptiness.
Converting sacred sexual energy meant for love and life
into a pawn of the cult of pleasure, leading ultimately to shame, isolation, and the slow corrosion of my own capacity to love.
That's incredibly bleak. Does the author offer any specific examples of this internal struggle?
Yes, they reference ancient practices like mortification of the flesh, fasting, self-flagellation as a desperate attempt to cleanse, to burn out the lust.
Seeking purity through pain, an illusion of lightness in the soul through lightness in the body.
A desperate search. And this personal story connects to the broader critique in how pornography and sex became a death cult.
Which argues that the liberal erosion of moral anchors leads to nihilism.
Right, creating an environment where a single secular gospel, like climate catastrophe or identity revolution, can function like dogma, priming youth for these death cult ideologies.
And it even critiques the commodification of sacrifice on platforms like OnlyFans.
Yeah, seeing young people martyr their own bodies and privacy for money and clout, offering their flesh on the digital altar.
A ritualized self-exploitation leading to loneliness, anxiety, depression, shame, eroding their sense of self.
It paints a very grim picture of modern consumption, twisting even intimate desires into self-destructive rituals via societal pressure and digital platforms.
Okay, after all that darkness, all that critique,
Yeah.
do these sources offer any way out, any pathways towards renewal?
Surprisingly, yes. Amidst the bleakness, there are these glimmers of hope, these alternative ways of thinking.
Like what? Where do we start?
Well, Verslag van den Engel introduces this really fascinating, if speculative, theory from William James Sidis about reversed mirror image possession and his sorting demon.
A sorting demon.
Yeah.
Like Maxwell's demon in physics.
Kind of. Sidis used thermodynamics, specifically the second law about entropy, everything tending towards disorder.
Right, inevitable decay.
But Sidis proposed that the reversal of this isn't an anomaly. He saw it as a regular and observable phenomenon, which he identified with life itself.
So life actively works against entropy, like a demon sorting things to create order.
That's the idea. Turning a fundamental law on its head for living systems, suggesting an inherent drive towards order within life, countering decay.
Okay, so how does that translate practically? What does it mean for us?
Within this framework, that chaotic, non-available energy of the universe gets transformed by life into a reserve fund of energy, exclusively accessible to living things.
A reserve fund. This resonates with William James's later idea of reserve energy in mental and biological life.
Exactly. Sidis's theory offers a possible origin for it. It suggests life has this intrinsic ability to defy decay, to generate energy.
So even when things feel overwhelmingly chaotic, there's a fundamental biological drive within us towards order, regeneration, a kind of resilience.
That's the implication. A scientific grounding for hope, maybe? A defiant spark against entropy. And even in the ashes of that deep societal critique, there's hope too. In How My Belief System Became a Death Cult, the author moves away from that destructive annihilator's fantasy.
The temptation to just burn it all down because it's so corrupt.
Right. They realize cleansing by fire is a seduction, not salvation. Acknowledging the urge is strong, given real oppression, but resisting it is vital.
A turning point, away from nihilism towards rebuilding.
Exactly. And Leaving Without Dying picks up on this. It says, hate exhausts itself into hope, but...
Not by itself.
Yes.
Hope needs active cultivation.
Yes. The ashes alone are not enough. What matters is what we choose to plant in them.
Agency. We have to choose to plant those small acts of kindness, willingness to trust again, commitment to truth-telling.
It's not about finding one single answer, but a beautiful, stark contrast to that phenophoric kitchen. Renewal rooted in simple communal acts, reclaiming the sacred in the everyday. And a core part of this renewal, the sources stress, is reclaiming authentic faith and critical thought.
How do they suggest doing that?
The Bible is presented by one source as a wellspring of wisdom, reminding us we are not orphans cast into a void, we are bearers of divine image, offering context, coherence against relativism.
Providing an anchor, a shared narrative framework against that shattered logos. Moral guidance, purpose.
Right. But how do we reclaim truth and faith genuinely in this fragmented world?
Good question. What does education and the revival of critical thought say?
It emphasizes that our quest for logos, reason, truth, the sacred word, is tied up with education itself, nurturing both intelligence and conscience.
So not just knowledge, but moral discernment, engaging the humanities as a pilgrimage of the soul.
Exactly. It highlights this idea of a pedagogy of reality, teaching metaphysics, wonder, classical reasoning to fight the pixelated reality, the metaphysical void many feel.
Combating the filtered, curated information overload.
And Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning gets cited here.
For showing how myths and archetypes underlie ideologies and focusing on individual conscience against mass constructions.
Precisely. Equipping individuals to navigate complex narratives, make informed ethical choices, find their own moral compass instead of just following the crowd.
Yeah.
And to counter that manufactured confusion and tribalism, the sources really push for genuine community and dialogue.
How? What does that look like?
Promoting deliberative democracy in public forums, investing in civic infrastructure libraries, schools, debate clubs.
Spaces that teach us how to argue rather than simply how to yell. Fostering critical thinking, considering multiple views.
Exactly. Imagine places where the goal is understanding, not winning, where different views enrich the picture rather than being seen as threats.
That sounds challenging, but necessary.
Very. And it includes the idea of welcoming houses of faith that actually invite questions and encourage exploration, not demand blind obedience.
And interfaith dialogue, too. Simply sharing stories to find common values, compassion, justice, beauty, building bridges.
Yes. Not minimizing differences, but finding shared humanity. These conversations across divides, they're hard, but they're the fertile ground for healing.
As the quote says, every step towards stillness, every neighborly act, every conversation across divides nourishes a larger renewal.
Aiming for that forest of understanding, standing where once was asphalt, transforming barrenness into connection and wisdom. And ultimately, the path forward is framed as a choice, a conscious, deliberate one. Corruption, the faithful, concludes. From abyss to ascent is a choice.
A choice between the curse of surrender and the blessing of struggle, between meaninglessness and purpose.
It emphasizes our agency. Even when systems feel overwhelming, our personal choices still matter immensely.
So what does this mean for you listening? We're called to choose life over death, hope over despair, love over apathy.
Finding the courage to be human again, simple, fallible, joyous, and something as basic as breaking bread. Engaging authentically, fostering connection.
And that specific detail from one source. If it doesn't fit the Bible, it likely doesn't fit reality, as our culture and society was founded on the Bible, its teachings.
That invites you to consider the role of foundational texts, whatever they may be for you, in shaping our reality, our ethics, our civilization.
A call to examine the bedrock principles that might guide us towards a more coherent, humane future, to look at our foundations.
So we've journeyed through some incredibly complex, sometimes dark ideas today, from those intimate psychological paradoxes challenging our own reality,
All the way to these vast societal death cults of consumption and ideology shaping our collective world.
And as we sit with this pervasive war on language and perception, the rise of ideologies as new faiths, we really have to ask ourselves, and ask you, in a world where reality feels so fractured, so contested, how do you tell the genuine light from that blinding fire, the fire that promises purity but just consumes?
That is a powerful thought to sit with, a crucial one. This deep dive into your sources, it really shows us that even when things feel overwhelmingly confusing, even despairing, even when the world seems like a minefield, there are always threads of hope if we choose to plant them, if we choose to nurture them. The choice, as always, is ours.
Well said.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.